a big misconception that people have is that we're like purely a browser agent. And actually, the way that Dex works is we take in context from the browser and then we do actions through the form of tool calling, like not through MCP for us, but we make custom tools for the power apps that we care about. And that's been 100 times more efficient and accurate for our users.
Most podcasts talk to founders after the story is already written. When the latest raise is announced, the product has shipped, and the narrative is clean.
We wanted to find out why they decided to take the founder leap in the first place, what idea captured their imagination, and how they handle the pressure to build. Welcome to First Commit. I'm Laura Hamilton.
I'm Eliya, and we're investors at Notable Capital. We spend a lot of time with technical founders who are on the cutting edge. If you're thinking about what it's like to start a company in the AI era, this one's for you.
This is First Commit. Let's get into it. Today on First Commit, we have Regina Lin, the CEO and co-founder of Dex. Dex is building browser agents that are trying to be the knowledge workers for everyone. Welcome, Regina.
Thank you so much, Laura.
So you went to undergrad at Harvard, and now you're building a browser agent from scratch where you started off at YC. Can you just touch on the moment that you realized the problem you're solving was real and not just a concept?
Yeah, this is lots to unpack already. So maybe to give you guys some context, I can start with when we first originally started working on the problem. I think for both my co-founder, Kevin, and I, it was very much a personal problem that we had. We were juggling a lot of work, undergrad, a master's, building stuff on the side. And both of us were never like the super organized types. So like my whole life, I previously never used Google Calendar, never had a notes app, tried Notion many times, and the nested pages just didn't do it for me. So, and maybe even going a little bit before that, I grew up playing piano professionally, so did 8 hours of practice a day.
When did you start?
When I was 5.
Wow.
Yeah. So my whole life, I started practicing 5 hours when I was 5. And then in high school, it became 8 to 10 hours. I was also doing public high school. So that meant I started my homework at midnight and had maybe 2 to 3 hours before it lights out. So because of that, I couldn't do digital chores with like organizing, whatever. Like I just need to get the work done. And also everything was always in my head. So constantly tracking everything I had to do, juggling between those different things. And I think it was around our junior year in college when Kevin and I started working on a little side project. People still called everything GPT wrappers at the time. And I think we were working really late nights. So we wanted to have GPT 4.0 order DoorDash for us late at night when we forgot to eat dinner. And that was the very first like use case for ourselves. It was to do that, and it worked. So then after that, we had to do a variety of other things like organizing our schoolwork into calendar, then eventually applied it to like an invoicing use case. And I think that was the moment when we realized this was maybe like a useful thing for other people too. What happened was we snuck into this AI conference in Boston.
Which one?
I don't even remember the name. And we like found any random event that was happening outside of campus. And we had to print out fake lanyards or name cards and buy lanyards to sneak into the conference too. But we had just so happened to bump into someone who he managed, I think, hundreds of like UiPath bots as his job. And he saw our demo just casually in the hallway of the event. And he was like super surprised. And he was telling us like, this can replace UiPath. Like I have to manage all these computers. It always breaks. It doesn't do anything. And you guys have this piece of tech that can like just download the PDF, input it into QuickBooks. And that was what made us realize like, hey, maybe this could be useful.
So you were at Harvard at the time. And so did you end up finishing or did you drop out?
I ended up leaving and dropping out. Yeah.
Did you see any parallels from your years of piano playing to building or coding a new company?
Yeah, for sure. I think like I was looking back and reflecting, and all those hours I spent really focusing on doing one thing super, super well, that definitely like taught me a lot. And I think it also led to me pivoting into math as my major in college, because that's concentration where you really have to sit and think about a problem for a really long time. And then after that with building, it's the same thing. It's like you have to really commit and be really passionate about it. Yeah, like no kid wants to give up all those things repeatedly for something unless they're really, really passionate about that one thing, right?
It's probably very rewarding for you also. Like if you had all that energy to give to it, there had to be some feedback mechanism.
Yeah, I in terms of feedback, I think like The other thing that it taught me was like being really good at taking harsh feedback. So like from piano teachers to public masterclass where you perform and you're getting roasted in front of the crowd and they're there to take notes and watch you get critiqued. And then also competitions where it's very subjective and also you like your whole years of work gets put into one moment on stage. But yeah, I do think it's rewarding to have done that for sure.
Do you think that you're able to show up stronger under pressure now because of your piano experience?
Yeah, I was just thinking about this yesterday because I was catching up with some founders about like high stress situations in running their day-to-day work.
Every
And
day.
yeah, I was thinking about like what is it that makes it stressful? And I was thinking for myself, I feel like there's been times where I was so stressed about to get on stage and perform in front of like 100 people. And I, for example, didn't have the piece fully memorized because I was doing school and I had maybe 2 weeks to memorize a 30-minute program. Like, what was I going to do if I like forgot I had just memorized it the day before? And that kind of pressure of having to just get on there and fake it till you make it and just hope for the best and make it out, like having performed something, like I feel like nothing so far has been as daunting as actually doing that. Even despite all the difficult decisions to make, like I know that I can face it head on after having done that before.
There's something about performance, right? Like there's showing up in the moment and giving your best, even though you've kind of like prepared, and it's never what you imagined.
Yeah,
You
it
prepare
never
for.
happens the way you expect it to or hope that it would be. Yeah.
Do you remember a time, maybe music or later in life, where you really had to like improvise?
Yeah, for sure. Wait, so was it during music and also after? Yeah, one time I actually did forget the page, like the very last 2 minutes of a concerto. It was like the very last whole competition piece was like 30 minutes. At the very end, I had forgotten it and had to improv the ending. And I just like made something up and like hit the last note and then walked off the stage. Luckily, it was contemporary. So when it didn't sound right, like who knows? That
Nobody
might be
noticed.
part of the piece. Yeah, definitely. I think that has helped me a lot in terms of thinking out of the box when solving problems now. Like we operate in a very, I think, like dynamic space where every week something new comes out. You have to think about like first principles, like is what we're doing correct? Should we adapt to this right now? Or yeah. And I think that flexibility of being able to handle any kind of situation depending on what's happening in the moment, that's something that's been helpful as well.
How have you thought about doing that as a first-time founder? Like, how are you learning like when to iterate, what hypotheses to test, especially in an exciting but also competitive market that Dex is operating in? And it would probably be helpful to touch on Dex as well, just so we can ground folks.
So Dex is a browser agent that lives inside of Chrome and helps people do manual work in their browser. And it also connects to a variety of integrations outside of the browser. So really helping people save time from all the manual admin digital chore work that they have to do. And I guess in terms of your question on learning, that's something I've kind of thought about a lot. It's like if you haven't seen something before, how do you figure out if you know everything you need to know to make the best decision, right? And I think like having gone through building for the last year, a lot of times nothing I can read or learn about from somebody else is as good as just having done it and heard the feedback directly from like your own actions. Because I think it's hard to compare situations or get advice because no one fully knows the exact situation and all the details of like your exact product. There might be some very tiny detail resulting in some results. So like only you know the full picture, like have the full context on like what might be the actual reason for user feeling a certain way. And so I think like it's been a lot more fruitful for us to just do it instead of thinking too much, like trying to just put it out there and then get that feedback from seeing what actually happens.
So you described Dex beautifully. Help us ground it a bit in like, who is the target for it? Information workers, or where do they live today?
So our ICP is someone who fully lives in the browser for like 100% of the day, pretty much. And when you think about like where in the industry or like the market those people are, we tend to find them to be in go-to-market right now. And their entire workday is like in the browser inside of apps and also like a variety of tabs that don't have integrations like LinkedIn, for example. And the other thing that is really interesting is I have been asking everybody I speak to, like, do you have a personal to-do list anywhere. And for go-to-market people, they never do. They don't use Asana, they don't use Linear or anything like that. And sometimes their team tries to get them to, but I think the reason is their whole day evolves around other people and it's in the browser. So it's way too tedious to spend time putting down their to-dos when their to-dos are literally living like in their email, their calendar, their tabs. So those are the people that we are serving right now.
I actually spent a lot of time in go-to-market. I used to run global operations for a public company.
Yeah.
Spent a lot of salespeople and go-to-market folks in general. And many times it's implicit. It's like their to-dos are the tabs they have open.
Yeah.
The tab being open is the reminder, is the to-do.
Exactly. Yeah,
That's me with
why.
blog posts. When I have open a blog post, I need to read it before the end of the day.
Yeah, I look at their browser and it's always like 4 windows, maximum to the brim with tabs. I think like they try to share screen with me and then usually the browser crashes because they're waiting for it to load like every 2 clicks. So we see that a lot. And I was actually surprised. Like we thought people had a lot of tabs, but I found people with like way more tabs than I expected.
What has it been acquiring early users or going to market? How are you finding folks to try Dex out?
So far, it's been very like natural word of mouth. We haven't invested too much into an actual go-to-market motion yet. And this is because we wanted to actually go for like really high retention or make sure we're adding a ton of value into the users who are naturally discovering us first before like growing more with a leaky bucket. And I think like as of the last few weeks, we're very happy now with our retention. So we'll be doing that more in the future. But I think like it's been great to use like LinkedIn and Instagram for us, just having our own team show our own use cases for the product. That's actually a big thing for us. Like I'm still like a user of the product today with like many thousand other people that use it quite a bit too. So yeah, every second of my day, I'm using the product.
I wanted to go actually back to your point about discovering your ICP. You're starting a company, you have this idea, cool. One of the characteristics is like almost any human that's in the browser, which is almost any human can use this. How did you end up narrowing it down to go-to-market folks or salespeople?
Yeah, it's kind of a long story, but before my days building, I dabbled a little bit in the investment banking world. And that was another shocking thing where I looked at Harvard, like where did the smartest people I know, where were they going? And one of them happened to be a pianist, and he was at the time president of every finance club. So he was like, you should do this. And I was like, sure, this guy did what I did. Maybe I should go down that path. And during my summer internship and like the time I was kind of recruiting, talking to people in that space, so many very smart, ambitious young people that I knew in college, they entered that industry and they came out just completely burnt out. Like they got sent to the hospital even. And every year there are people that die like in banking because they're sleeping. And then having done the job myself, one of the reasons I actually wanted to explore it was like, what are people doing? Like what's taking that long? Like why is it like drinking from a fire hose? And I got a lot of those questions answered after having seen it, but also like at the same time, a lot of the work that the analysts and people are doing, it's really all automatable by agents today. And even I guess like in 2024, it was less possible, but still a lot of it could have been helped greatly tools and better technology. So I think I became very passionate right before building Dex with that problem. I was like, people just should not be having to do this kind of work. And even outside of banking, just like regular admin work, there are many people who like every day their job is to do the same like monotonous task in their browser workspace. And I just think that if people were freed from doing that coordination work, from moving data between software, all of that, like world would be a better place. So that was kind of what led me to explore where would we be able to kind of like benefit people the most. And I think like from there, we went from finance to market research when we had applied to YC, which is tied to like one of the other questions. And eventually we realized that like we started in the browser because that's where we can immediately get the most context.
So you're able to get a ton of context from the browser. What are the capabilities today that you can achieve with that context versus what you can't?
I think like when most people start out, especially students, they think that being on the desktop is like the best move. And this is what we originally did too. And very quickly you realize you have a couple paths forward. Like either you make a browser extension back before WebMCP came out to get more
or you
browser
build a whole
context.
browser like some have done.
Yeah. Or you have to spend a lot of time working with AppleScript or the Microsoft ecosystem. We actually like dabbled in all of those. And then we ended up picking the browser because the context is most available. There's a lot of tooling provided in the native Chrome ecosystem. And beyond just depending on vision, you can also utilize the DOM to have more structured clues into what the user is doing. So that was why we picked the browser. And I think like now back to the question of like, how did we find our current ICP? It's really thinking about who depends on the browser as their command center when they work every day. And the kind of magic moment early on for our product was just not having to context switch between their tabs, or even just like the organized tabs feature. We had spent a lot of time building all these agentic features and like actions that people could do. But then at the end of the day, so many people, they were like, oh, I just didn't have to switch to this other tab to grab a piece of information. Or like, oh, I really like that it cleaned up my tabs for me. And that was when we started realizing like, hey, maybe the value add here is that context switching piece, not like us trying to tell everyone like this can do actions for you, which I think until more recently, people didn't really understand how AI could even do actions for you.
It's really interesting. I wonder if you guys have data on how many times on average people context switch between tasks.
Yeah, we had this interesting idea to do like a browser wrapped because you can see how productive you were every day, which I think for knowledge workers never really existed. But for engineers, you can check your GitHub history. You can even show people your GitHub, like I did this much engineering work. But with what we've built out, it's actually possible to kind of look back at a diary of your work daily and see like I've been rotating through tabs. And what we discovered was like the browser kind of mirrors the mental model of the user. And you can tell by matching what their job and their work and their day-to-day looks like to their natural like organization style or mental model around how they organize their day-to-day. If you mix and match these things, there's like a finite amount of buckets of types of ways that people kind of like to do work. And it's interesting because then you can see like some people rotate through their tabs very quickly. Like they linearly go through them and they will exit out the moment they stop needing them. And they like cycle through so many tabs every day. And then other people leave them all open and they're very attached to the tabs. I'm kind of like that, where the tabs are like reminders for them and they always need to kind of jump to another task, come back. So all these threads are just like open there. And then you have people who are like very organized by windows. So they'll open up 5 different windows and every workflow is in its own little window. And I think like Arc users are very much like that because they can organize their spaces easier.
How do current users evaluate success metrics of the product?
A successful day of using Dex, or like first moment of using Dex, is if it was able to take your mind off something. So an example of that, like let's say something as simple as sending an email follow-up or scheduling, you have to pay attention and do that task, even if it's very simple, like responding. If your day is already filled back to back with stuff, like that extra effort of writing out that response and thinking about it, that is effort for people. And that's why they like will switch to GPT, paste it in, and then like have GPT give you a response sometimes. They're just kind of tired of that mental effort. With Dex, we're trying to increase the difficulty and like the amount of time saved through taking their mind completely off of a task. So I can just tell Dex to schedule for me and don't have to think about it anymore. They do have to come back to eventually approve some like very mission critical actions, but that whole in between, like we want them to not have to think about it and just let the agent handle it.
It's a meta pattern I love to call it. It's offloading your bio tokens into
Oh,
digital
yeah.
tokens. Think about how many you're burning a day.
Yeah.
These reminders to close your day. And if,
Yeah.
to your point, easily automatable.
I feel like 2026 is the year of these browser and computer use agents. I think we're seeing the model Foundation Labs as well as other startups just move deeper into this area. How do you think about the landscape and how to quote unquote stay ahead?
I think a couple of things have changed. So like one, when we started in 2024 fall, computer use had just come out and that became a term like in the very early days. And it was very bad. Like it was just very slow and it wasn't very accurate. And I think that was the case for up until like literally this year. In the last few months, it started getting faster and more accurate. And I think benchmarks are now around like 80%. And you can further improve that on specific data, right? So before, everyone was thinking like you can only use this tech really for like full end-to-end automation in like a very traditional, like let's say logistics, and go for the UiPath route. And a lot of people who had been building browser agents actually wanted to use it for consumer. And I think also a lot of them were coming from a very engineering heavy perspective. Once they actually deployed these, they realized like knowledge workers don't really want to use this in the way that I thought they would want to use this for their work. So I think like now it's just, that's one piece, like it's a lot more possible, it's a lot faster, it's a lot more accurate. And then the other thing is I think there was a very big like mental model shift around going away from this full automation mindset to like co-working is okay, and like the whole co-working paradigm is like fine, and having human in the loop is necessary right now and actually improves like the agent's ability to learn and get better too. So I think that happened along with the launches of like Cowork and the whole Claude bot, open Claude craze that went very viral. And I think those things really helped the people outside of maybe like the SF bubble or people who are less technical to realize like actually AI is not just for research and not just for summarizing, but it can do actual actions for you in your like real world day-to-day tasks. And that's been huge because you can see now everyone's looking for solutions to their problems and they're able to be creative about like what they want AI to actually do for them. So yeah, I think those things combined made browser agents a lot more viable this year and a very exciting space to be in.
It feels like, if we expand on it a bit, to your point, like what people are actually trying to solve with this, like almost every day, some Playwright CLI came a few weeks ago, and now Alibaba released their page agent. And today I saw a couple other things that I can't even recall. The ecosystem is exploding, and you guys have been very early on the browser. Do you think, are you married to the idea of the browser being the right space? Or it's more about the purpose, the thing you're trying to resolve, and you will adapt to what's happening in the market?
I think for us, we started on the computer and then we chose the browser because we were super obsessed with like, how can we become the player who has captured the most context from the user and truly understand their whole workspace end to end. That was the reason why we picked the browser back then. There was a lot less standard tooling, to your point, with like Playwright CLI coming out and all that. It's showing that like it's becoming more democratized and very standard to be able to access tooling in the browser, and that agents need access to the browser. So a lot of helpful tooling has come out, but we're definitely not married and we're not like browser only. Even today, a big misconception that people have is that we're like purely a browser agent. And actually, the way that Dex works is we take in context from the browser and then we do actions through the form of tool calling, like not through MCP for us, but we make custom tools for the power apps that we care about. And that's been 100 times more efficient and accurate for our users. And we definitely also mixed in browser tooling with that. And that was something that we didn't see labs or like people doing that often for quite some time in the last year until more recently, is like combining the two together. So that means the agent knows to call a browser tool and click on your screen when that's needed. And then it will call like directly into Gmail, for example, when that's more efficient. Have you guys seen like Claude and Chrome extension and like Atlas and all of those? Yeah, if you try asking it to fill out a spreadsheet for you, it will take 7 minutes plus to try to fill out one row, and then it ends up putting it into one cell. And that's just like the most obvious example for people. When like you ask Dex to do it, it will be able to fill like hundreds of rows just in a few minutes accurately. And I think like the tool calling stuff is very helpful there.
My agents have been playing a bit with the Playwright CLI and the Alibaba agent page. Let's see.
What do you think are the bigger like constraints in the space right now? 2026 compared to 2027, where will we go?
I think right now a lot of attention is on like how to gather and utilize like team context. So it's no longer only about like your personal agent, but it's also like how can you share these agents to your team and have this collective data that's been extracted and utilized to make your agents better. And it's interesting because I think a lot of people want to build it from scratch right now. Like obviously Claude Code's made things a lot easier. And I think it's like not sustainable long term because it's very like one-off, and you are quite literally building a whole platform end-to-end if you want to make it something your whole team can use. Like there's a lot of pieces to learn. And when I talk to especially like go-to-market folks, they're already working till like 12 a.m. Like they have these back-to-back calls, and then they have to learn how to code. They have to learn how context works, like how agents work. And then they're trying to vibe code a solution to build agents. And it's just a lot to do. And so I think like looking at the year ahead, a lot of interesting part is around like one, how do you actually structure the context, retrieve it, and then allow agents to use it? And then another big thing we're very focused on is like, what's the correct interface or like way to interact with the user? I think a lot of it's actually figuring out the right scaffolding around the tech, because the tech works now. It's only going to get better, but allowing people to actually utilize it in the mental model that makes sense to them. I think that piece is like under figured out at the moment. So like kind of different people want to use different agents in different places, right? And I think you should be able to use it from anywhere. So some people might work from the browser, they'll use it from the browser, CLI, phone, depending on where their day is, like that's where they should be able to use the technology. And then there's also a lot of questions with like, how do you make sure it's reliable? How do you build in observability? And all of that is very important to make it truly useful.
Yeah, as you're building into to businesses, into the enterprise, obviously trust and governance. And
yeah.
How do you guys think about like parallelization, which is notoriously complicated? It's hard to drive the browser multiple directions at the same time.
So we have parallel agents running, calling the tools. So for example, if I wanted to reach out with custom personalized emails to this whole spreadsheet of people, we'll send off different agents to go do that task. And the user just sees these pop up like in their browser sidebar. So for difficult tasks like that are in bulk, we're not sending off browser agents because that will kill their Chrome immediately. On the other hand, we play around with the tab groups a lot. So we've been trying to see like if we can figure out this tab group or like these scattered tabs are one work stream and one thread, and these other ones are a different one. And if we can, first of all, like tab group things correctly, not by topics of the tab, but by their actual workflow, then can we also have a different sidebar come up to tackle that task in that tab group? So this is something we're exploring with. As of right now, the way it works is it's one universal sidebar for like all that. Then people have actually liked that more than some of the AI browsers where it opens up a new sidebar per tab, because then you're still context switching a lot.
That makes sense. How many people are on the team today?
It's still very small. So we have 4 people full time. It's my co-founder and I, and then 2 engineers.
How have you thought about building an AI first product in an AI first world? Are you able to keep a leaner team?
Our internal goal right now is actually to run all of our operations on Dex by the end of April. So currently we have 2 growth interns, and their job before they leave is to like automate their own work as much as possible. And we've been feeding all of our context to our context engine, which Dex also connects to and runs off of. It's been like amazing how much it can do for me. So like to give you a tangible example, I was evaluating CRMs in the last little bit because I'm now talking to too many different customers. They're telling me different feature requests and they all have different blockers. And I couldn't find really a CRM that's far enough where it can actually gather all of my data from everywhere and then surface the right results with like AI to analyze and consolidate that. And then after we had connected our context system to all these integrations that we have, so it's live updating with every Slack message, every email I'm getting, every calls that I'm not in as well. And all of that's feeding in live. And at any moment, Dex has access to that and knows and has this complete understanding of what's going on. So basically what I asked it to do was just like generate me a spreadsheet with all the fields that I care about. Like I want to know what's blocking every customer right now that I spoke to in the last week. I also want to know what feature requests have been most requested and what should be prioritized in our product roadmap. And it was able to do that in, I kid you not, like 1 minute. And it was more comprehensive than any CRM that I tested. And I can just whip up an analysis like that at any given moment. So that's been super powerful. And that's not even an automation use case. Like I can have this run on a trigger. I can do a bunch of things to tie like all the agents in the background together. So yeah, it's definitely very powerful. And we are planning to run our company off of that.
That sounds a lot like a memory problem. That feeds into your context engine, or are you guys using something from the community for that?
We build everything from scratch. So the way that we handle context and memory, there's 2 pieces. One is kind of the source of truth that we're extracting from integrations. And that just comes from having a lot of connectors, extracting the data out and building relationships and understanding what is this company's source of truth, or like their reality, essentially. And then the other piece comes from observing in the browser what the daily processes and decisions are being made coming from each individual. And we combine these 2 together to actually like enrich the knowledge of what Dex can understand and know. And the two pieces kind of give you different pros and cons, but it builds a much better understanding of everything.
How far do you think you'll be able to scale as a company with, call it 4, 5, 6 people?
I think you can do a lot. Like what I realized is that software is easy to make now, like the CRM piece or like a dashboard, or if you have full access to your data and you can utilize it with agents, it can do so much for you. You can just vibe code a CRM if you wanted one. You can vibe code a dashboard or an automation or an agent, and all of it can kind of do work for you when you're resting and sleeping. So I think like that's the direction I see things going. It's almost like lovable but for agents. And what needs to happen though is like you need to be able to extract and understand all of the data that you have, and then there's a missing piece of data, which is what we're trying to figure out how to collect more of, which is kind of like how are people making decisions and what actually results in a certain outcome that gets logged somewhere versus just looking at the outcome and not knowing how that got there.
Building on that, you're a very lean team. You're achieving a lot. You're moving really fast. Is there some magic sauce in how you organize your engineering best practices or things that you've developed along the way to help you do that?
Yeah, so with building off of what I said earlier with the CRM that I can just create at any second, I have that update every time I have new conversations. After a few days, I'll ask it to update that. And then with that, I immediately tell it to prioritize like the product roadmap items we have and add it all to our linear. So that piece, no one has to kind of manually add tickets into linear. Anytime anyone gets like a customer request, either through a call, an email, or in Slack, we also just ask Dex to go add it into linear. So all of that work saves so much time for us. And you can also, that's like the day-to-day piece. You can also kind of take a step back and it helps me analyze like the direction that we're going in. So I use it a lot for brainstorming and looking at all the data at once, which is not something you can humanly do by yourself. Like that's, I think, one of the greatest use cases for AI. I can have it read through every single interaction that we've had in the last few months, or like look through logs and figure out like on the broader scheme of things, what are we getting wrong in our assumptions of our users? Like is what we think correct, or is there something else that's going on here? So constantly like analyzing and reanalyzing and figuring that out. And I think that's something I would like very much recommend as well.
Maybe we could do one last subject around where Dex is today, like what's keeping you up at night.
I think one big thing that's a little bit surprising, and actually it's not that surprising once you think about it, is that one of the blockers at the end of the day is human creativity. Like people are not very good at systems thinking or managing others, and giving them agents is essentially telling them you have this team that you can go tell them to do whatever. And what we found is that people find it hard to come up with new use cases. So even if we give them templates or we give them suggestions, sometimes they're like, oh, great, I can use Dex for this one use case, and they'll always use it for that one use case, but they're not able to think of more use cases. So that was like a big learning for us. It's sometimes better to educate your user on the capability rather than a feature. And a lot of times people will take use cases as features. They're like, okay, I can do this use case, but that to them, that's a feature rather than like, I understand the capabilities underneath and I can now apply it to other situations. So we've been working a lot on kind of like the education piece. And I think that's actually a plus when it comes to sales, because many teams right now, they're also internally trying to figure out, is the right move to adopt a product? Is it to build internal tooling, or should we actually invest in like a Claude Code program to teach everyone how to use AI and how to build agents? I guess like education is a big piece of what we're doing, and we're like contributing to helping people actually understand how to use agents and like what's going on underneath the surface.
That's such a beautiful, you've crystallized it very well. I find that AI is fundamentally very new and unlocks a lot of things, but also in many ways it's not new at all. To your point, the limiting factor seems to be thinking in levers. Humans who can understand the levers of a system have found ways historically how to achieve leverage, right? Hiring other people, building systems. Now it's kind of like AI is bringing leverage to anyone.
Yeah.
And if you don't have that thinking, you're just going to phase zero, interact with it back and forth. But if you think in a system, you can do so much.
Yeah, and that's also why I brought up kind of like the lovable point, right? Because when websites first came out, it was difficult to make one, and everyone wanted to prove the fact they could build it from scratch. And then more and more tooling came out, and now we have like you can vibe code a full stack app or a website super easily. So I think the same thing will eventually happen with like building systems and agents, hopefully, where you don't have to think about as much going on behind the scenes, and like the tooling that we're building and other people are building kind of take care of a lot of that process for you. So like everything from context management to prompting correctly to routing to the right type of agent to use, like whether that's browser or like tool calling, or all of that is kind of knowledge that it's important to have that knowledge to know how to optimize your workflow. And I realized that the reason why some users aren't able to use it as much as I can is because they don't have that knowledge, and they wouldn't know that. Why would they know that? That's like something that will just improve gradually throughout the year.
Meta, right? Like goes all the way back to that advice you got, that school contact that led you down the path to investment banking. And only through the pain you realized what you want to do and you understand the system. And now you built like a system of leverage all around that.
Yeah.
You have to go through the pain to learn.
And that's actually also, we didn't touch on this, but why we pivoted inside of our YC batch. We just realized that there was nothing wrong with the idea we were doing.
What was it?
We joined YC building customer intelligence. So this was around when we were really obsessing over context. And we had this idea that what if you could have your product collect user touch points directly and use the interface is to interact with users, collect that data, and utilize that to adapt your website or adapt your product. And the reason why we moved out was purely kind of like a founder product fit reason. Like we wanted to build the original side project we were building back at school, and not something because we thought like this is what people wanted or like it's B2B and all these other reasons. I think I actually had like a 30 to 50% response rate when I was messaging CMOs about the like customer market intelligence tool. But even that was not like as interesting to us than finding something that was kind of a mix between getting to build at the forefront of the tech, but also something that immediately people, ourselves and people around us, like wanted to actually use. I think that's pretty rare of an idea to find and have that timing. So we didn't want to lose that opportunity.
For sure. I mean, it's really impressive that you pivoted, and it's a long journey. So I think it makes sense to do something that you're passionate about, especially with people that you're so close to. I bet you and your co-founder have such an authentic, open relationship.
I can't imagine not knowing, like having to work with someone where you don't know them for like very long, because then you never know what they're really like thinking. Whereas like with my co-founder, we've been friends for so long, we've worked in many different situations for so long. Like if he walks in the room after talking to a potential hire customer, I immediately get the vibe of what's going on. And that's like super nice to be able to have.
Do you and your team, do you guys all live in the same house too?
We used to all live together as well with our early employees.
Had to
It was
ask.
really fun.
I think that's a very San Francisco thing. I spend my
Yeah.
time between San Francisco and Tel Aviv. That is not happening in Tel Aviv.
Yeah, it's a little less frequent in New York, I would say.
It's definitely an interesting experience. We all now moved out to be right across the street, so it's a 10-second walk for all of us. And I think it does make
Your
a little
relationship
bit
is
of a
evolving. Okay.
We each have our own doors now.
Yeah, and we needed more meeting space in our office. So it's been nice to get like that sunlight when you walk to work in the morning.
Sunlight seems to be important for humans.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, do you want to wrap with a quick fire round?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. What is one daily task you'll never do again in 2 years?
Because it's 2 years, I'm gonna say something kind of extreme. I think in 2 years, I don't want to open a web app and use it like at all. I already like have gotten rid of a lot of that in my day-to-day, so I don't have to manually respond to emails. I don't have to schedule, like even opening Slack, updating Linear, all of that's been like done through Dex. And I think like in 2 years, I wouldn't really need to like manually use the browser at all.
What's the most underrated consumer AI use case right now?
I think it'd be actually reminding you to do something or reminding you not to do something. So kind of like proactive, like keeping you focused. That's been something that's been really helpful and fun. And it's also a little bit gamified. Like if you have trouble with getting distracted, it can let you know like, hey, you need to focus on whatever you're working on. Or like the opposite, where maybe you forgot to put something into your system of record. Like you wouldn't really know that until like now you have this agent that can tell you forgot to follow up, or there's a task that is about to be due. These have been really like fun, interesting use cases.
What's a non-obvious constraint in building agents?
Definitely the interface piece of it. I think this is under talked about because it's always about like the technicalities of it, but actually like the interface itself I think is really important. And it's because agents fundamentally operate around like your mental model, and that includes like the interface you're using it out of. And when the CLI or like the IDE is not your natural interface, what should it look like? It can take many different form factors. You can interact with it in many different ways.
Last one. What are you personally too stubborn to let AI do?
Writing, like everything I write, I still will always make like a first draft of it or speak. I will actually write out like my raw thoughts, even if it's not organized or cohesive. And then I will use AI to come up with more ideas to phrase things, but I don't want it to come up with the first copy for anything. The other thing is, another one that I'm very like, I think like AI interviews or anything where it replaces like you actually talking to someone face to face, there's just so much nuance that would get lost. Like I could not imagine ever letting that go.
I agree. Thanks, Regina.
Thank you guys so much. Yeah.